In October of 1955, a small ship left Samoa and sailed into the South Pacific. It was supposed to be an ordinary voyage, a short journey across open water, a trip from Apia Harbour to the Tokelau Islands. The route was known, the destination was clear, and the people on board expected to arrive within 2 days. But the ship never reached Tokelau. No one stepped onto the dock, no cargo was unloaded, no message came from the captain, no passenger returned home. The ship was called MV Joyita, and when it was finally found weeks later, it was drifting alone in the ocean, damaged, silent, far from where it was supposed to be. But the strangest part was not that the ship had been found. The strangest part was that everyone on board was gone. 25 people had vanished, there were no bodies, no clear distress message, no final explanation. The Joyita was not a large ocean liner, it was not a warship, it was not built to cross the world. But it had a strange reputation, it was considered extremely difficult to sink. Its hull was built with buoyant materials. Its holds had been lined with cork. Even if water entered the vessel, the ship was expected to remain afloat. That is what makes the case so disturbing. If the Joyita could still float, why did everyone leave? On board were 16 crew members and 9 passengers. There were sailors, workers, a government official, a doctor, a copra buyer, and 2 children. They were not disappearing into legend when they left Samoa, they were simply traveling across the Pacific. The ship carried cargo as well, medical supplies, food, timber, oil drums, ordinary things for ordinary islands. The voyage should have taken around 41 to 48 hours, but almost from the beginning there were problems. The Joyita had already been delayed. One of the engines was not working properly. When she finally left Apia on October 3rd, she was sailing with mechanical issues. Still, the journey did not seem impossible. Ships in the Pacific often operated under difficult conditions. Crews were used to improvising. The weather could be unpredictable. Equipment could fail. But people still made these voyages. The Joyita left the harbour. The land slowly disappeared behind her. The sea opened ahead. And for a time there was nothing unusual enough to alarm the outside world. Then the expected arrival date came. And passed. The Joyita did not appear. At first, delay was possible. Ships could be slowed by weather. Mechanical trouble could reduce speed. The ocean could make time uncertain. But then the delay became too long. The ship was overdue. A message was sent. The vessel had not arrived. Something was wrong. Search aircraft were sent over a huge area of ocean. They searched for wreckage. They searched for survivors. They searched for debris. They searched for any sign of a vessel in trouble. But the Pacific gave them nothing. No lifeboat, no oil slick, no floating cargo, no people. The Joyita seemed to have disappeared completely. For more than a month there was no answer. Families waited. Officials wondered. The ocean stayed silent. Then, on November 10th, another ship saw something strange in the distance. It was the merchant vessel Tuvalu. Its captain, Gerald Douglas, noticed a vessel drifting in the water. As his ship came closer, the outline became clear. It was the Joyita. But it was not sailing. It was not under control. It was not carrying anyone home. The ship was listing heavily. Part of it was flooded. Windows were broken. The vessel looked abandoned. But it had not sunk. It was still floating. And somewhere between Samoa, Tokelau, and the waters near Fiji, 25 people had disappeared from it. The Joyita was found alive. The people were not. The Joyita's route should have been simple. From Apia to Tokelau, a small vessel crossing a remote part of the South Pacific. The destination was not nearby, but it was not unknown. The ship had made similar voyages before. The crew knew the region. The captain, Thomas Dusty Miller, was experienced. He was not a man who should have panicked easily. He knew boats. He knew the Pacific. And most importantly, he knew the Joyita. That detail matters, because if anyone understood the vessel's unusual buoyancy, it should have been the captain. He should have known that the ship was difficult to sink. He should have known that staying aboard might be safer than abandoning it. And yet, when the Joyita was found, everyone was gone. To understand why that is so strange, imagine the situation. You are at sea, your ship is damaged, water may be entering somewhere below, the engines may be failing, the radio may not be working properly, the night is dark, the passengers are afraid, the crew is exhausted, but the vessel is still floating. It may be listing, it may be uncomfortable, it may look dangerous, but it is still a large object in the ocean. A ship can be seen, a raft may not be. A ship can provide shelter. A raft leaves you exposed. A ship gives you supplies. A raft gives you only hope. So why would 25 people leave the Joyita? That is the central question. The ship did not vanish beneath the waves. It did not explode. It did not burn to nothing. It did not break apart completely. It kept drifting. For weeks. Alone. Without the people who had trusted it. When investigators later examined the vessel, they found clues that suggested a serious emergency had taken place. The ship was partially flooded, the lower decks were affected, the engine room had problems, the vessel had been taken on water, but the hull itself was still sound. Once the water was pumped out, the Joyita could float upright again. That discovery made the mystery worse. The ship had looked like it was dying, but it had not been doomed. Something had convinced the people on board that they had to leave, or something had forced them to. There were signs of disorder. The ship's logbook was missing. Navigation equipment was missing. Some cargo was gone. The life rafts were gone. The dinghy was gone. A doctor's bag was found on deck. Inside were medical instruments and blood-stained bandages. That detail opened another question. Was someone injured? Was there an accident? Had the captain been hurt? Had someone on board needed emergency medical treatment? Or had violence occurred? There was no body to explain the blood, no witness to describe the injury, no survivor to tell investigators what happened. Only the abandoned evidence remained. The radio was also part of the mystery. It was found tuned to the international distress frequency. That suggested that someone may have tried to call for help. But if a message was sent, it was either not received or not understood. The radio equipment had problems. Its range may have been extremely limited because of faulty wiring, so the crew could have believed they were calling for rescue, while no one beyond a very short distance could hear them. Imagine that. A damaged ship in the night, water rising below, passengers asking what is happening, a radio operator trying to reach anyone. Static, silence, no answer. The ocean surrounding them on every side. The crew may have felt completely alone, but even then, the question remains. Why leave the ship? Why take the rafts? Why abandon the one object that was still floating? The Joyita was not just a missing ship case. It was the story of a ship that returned without its people, and that is what turned it into one of the most unsettling maritime mysteries of the 20th century. When the Joyita was found, it did not look like a normal vessel waiting for rescue. It looked wounded. The ship was leaning heavily to one side. Its port rail was near the water. The deck was wet. Some windows were broken. The superstructure showed damage. The vessel appeared neglected and exhausted, as if it had been drifting for a long time. But there was no one aboard. No captain, no crew, no passengers, no children, no doctor, no bodies, no final note. There was only the sound of the sea hitting the hull. The discovery created more questions than answers. If pirates had attacked the ship, why was the vessel left behind? If the passengers had been taken, where were the signs of a struggle? If the crew had abandoned ship, why had they not waited on a vessel that could still float? If a storm had swept people away, why were the rafts missing? And if they had entered the rafts voluntarily, why did not one person survive? The Joyita had drifted far from its intended course. Instead of arriving at Tokelau, it had been found hundreds of miles away. That meant it had been carried by currents and weather for weeks. During that time, the ship became a silent witness. It may have passed through storms. It may have drifted under clear skies. It may have been seen by no one. And all the while the evidence on board was changing. Water moved through the vessel. Objects shifted. Weather damaged surfaces. Salt and time erased details. By the time investigators saw the ship, the most important moments were already gone. The people had disappeared in the past. The ship had continued into the future, and no one could separate the two completely. Some details were especially disturbing. Electric clocks on board had stopped at the same time. The switches for lights were still on. This suggested that whatever happened may have occurred at night, when the ship still needed power and illumination. That image is haunting. A dark Pacific night. A damaged vessel. Cabin lights still switched on. People moving through wet corridors. Crew members trying to understand the danger. Passengers waiting for instructions. Perhaps the ship was listing more and more. Perhaps water was rising below. Perhaps someone believed the Joyita was about to capsize. If that happened, the decision to abandon ship might have seemed urgent. Even if it was the wrong decision, it could have felt necessary. Panic does not need perfect information. It only needs fear, and fear spreads quickly at sea. A sound from below deck, a failed engine, a radio that cannot reach anyone, a ship leaning into the water, a captain who may be injured, a crew under pressure, a dark ocean, passengers who do not understand what is happening. In that situation, people may decide that any raft is better than a failing ship, but if they entered the rafts, they entered a far deadlier world. The Pacific is not empty in a peaceful way. It is empty in a terrifying way. A small raft can vanish between waves. A person can disappear in seconds. The sun can burn. The night can freeze. Thirst can break the mind. Currents can carry survivors far from search areas. And if no one knows exactly where to look, rescue becomes almost impossible. That may be what happened to the 25 people from the Joyita. They may have left a ship that was frightening but survivable, and entered water that was not, but that is only one version. Because the Joyita did not give up the truth, it only returned as a question. The most practical explanation begins with mechanical failure. The Joyita was not in good condition. It had already left port with problems. One engine was not working properly. Other systems may have been unreliable. In the middle of the voyage, a leak may have developed. A corroded pipe in the cooling system may have allowed water to enter the lower parts of the ship. At first, the crew may not have understood what was happening. Water below deck can be deceptive. A ship may seem manageable until the flooding reaches a critical level. By the time the crew discovered it, the water may have been too deep to locate the leak easily. The bilge pumps were supposed to help, but if they were blocked or not working properly, the crew would have struggled to remove the water. The ship would begin to list. The engines might fail, power could become unreliable, and the crew would face a frightening combination of problems. A ship taking on water, a limited radio, no engine power, no clear position, no immediate help, and a night still ahead. The radio may be one of the most tragic parts of the story. If the crew tried to send a distress message, they may have believed someone would hear them. They may have waited for a reply. They may have repeated the call. They may have listened through static. But if the radio's range was too short, their signal might have gone nowhere. In that case, the people on the Joyita were not only in danger, they were isolated without knowing how isolated they truly were. There is another detail. The ship carried a doctor. If someone was badly injured, that could have changed everything. Blood-stained bandages were found. A medical bag was on deck. Perhaps a crew member had been hurt while trying to repair the engine room. Perhaps someone was injured during the emergency. Perhaps the captain himself became incapacitated. If Captain Miller was unable to lead, the situation could have become confused. A ship in crisis depends on authority. Someone must decide whether to stay aboard, repair the damage, send distress calls, or abandon ship. If leadership failed at the worst possible time, panic could take over. But the mechanical explanation still has a problem. The Joyita did not sink. Even damaged, flooded, and drifting, the vessel survived. That means the people on board may have abandoned a ship that would have kept them alive. The tragedy may have come from not understanding the ship's condition. They may have believed the Joyita was minutes from going under. They may have seen the list, the water, the failed systems, and concluded that staying aboard meant death. But if they left in the rafts, they may have chosen the deadlier option. This is why the Joyita case is so frustrating. The official and practical explanation is possible. It may even be likely, but it is not complete. It does not explain every missing item. It does not explain every decision. It does not tell us who gave the order. It does not tell us when they left. It does not tell us how long they survived. And it does not tell us why not one person was ever found. The sea can hide many things, but 25 people is a terrible number to disappear without a trace. Because the Joyita mystery was never fully solved, other theories began to grow. Some were practical, some were criminal, some were strange, and some were almost impossible. One theory suggests that the people on board were attacked. The South Pacific was remote but not empty. Ships could carry valuable cargo. People could have enemies. The Joyita may have been seen as vulnerable. If another vessel approached, the passengers and crew might have been overpowered. The missing cargo, missing navigation equipment, and missing logbook all make this theory tempting. But there is no strong evidence of a pirate attack. There were no bodies, no confirmed witnesses, no clear signs that another ship had forced the Joyita into submission. The theory exists because people disappeared, not because the evidence proves violence. Another idea is mutiny. Maybe the crew argued. Maybe the captain made decisions others refused to accept. Maybe fear turned into anger. A damaged ship at night can make men desperate. If passengers believed the crew was hiding the true danger, panic could spread. If the captain refused to abandon ship, others might have forced the issue. But again, there is no proof. No survivor described a conflict, no record confirms it. The Joyita gives hints, not answers. There were also theories involving smuggling or insurance. The ship had a troubled history. Some people wondered whether hidden cargo, illegal activity, or financial motives were involved. But these theories are difficult to prove. They often depend on suspicion more than evidence. The most dramatic theories came from the Cold War atmosphere of the time. Some imagined that a submarine had intercepted the ship, others suggested secret military involvement, but these ideas remain speculative. They make the story more cinematic, but not necessarily more truthful. The most human theory may be the simplest. There was an emergency. The ship looked as if it was sinking. The radio failed to bring help. The captain was injured or unable to lead. The passengers became terrified. The crew launched the rafts. Everyone left. The Joyita stayed afloat. The rafts did not. That version does not need pirates. It does not need ghosts. It does not need a secret attack. It only needs fear, darkness, bad equipment, and one wrong decision. But even that version leaves a final question. If they abandoned ship, where did they go? The Pacific should have left something: a raft, a body, a life jacket, a piece of clothing, a scrap of evidence, but nothing meaningful was recovered. 25 people were absorbed into the ocean so completely that the case became almost unreal. That is why people still call the Joyita a ghost ship, not because it was supernatural, but because it returned without its living passengers. A ship can be repaired, a ship can be towed, a ship can be examined, but the missing cannot speak, and the Joyita's missing never came back to tell the world what happened. After the Joyita was found, investigators tried to reconstruct the final hours. They studied the damage, they examined the flooding, they looked at the radio, they considered the missing rafts, they asked why the people had not stayed aboard, but the inquiry could not give a complete answer. The evidence was too damaged, the timeline was too uncertain, the ocean had taken too much. For the families, the result was unbearable. 25 people had left on a normal voyage. They had names, lives, plans, people waiting for them. Some were working, some were travelling, some were children, and then they were gone. Not officially explained, not recovered, not returned, just missing. A disappearance at sea is different from a death on land. On land there may be a place, a scene, a body, a grave. At sea there may be only water. The families of the Joyita's passengers and crew were left with a story that had no ending. The ship came back. Their loved ones did not. Over time, the Joyita became known as one of the great maritime mysteries. It was compared to the Mary Celeste. Another ship found abandoned. Another crew gone. Another vessel floating without the people who belonged on it. But the Joyita has its own kind of fear. It was not found centuries ago. It was found in the modern age. It had a radio. It had engines. It had search aircraft looking for it. And still, everyone vanished. That is what makes the case so powerful. It sits between the old world and the modern world, between maritime legend and mechanical failure, between ghost story and investigation report. The most likely answer may not be supernatural. It may be a chain of ordinary failures: a bad engine, a corroded pipe, flooding, a weak radio, a damaged vessel, a frightened crew, a captain who could no longer control the situation, a decision to abandon ship, and then the Pacific. But the most likely answer is not the same as the final answer. No one knows exactly when the people left. No one knows who made the decision. No one knows whether they were calm or terrified. No one knows how long they survived. No one knows where the rafts went. No one knows why the ocean left the ship but took every person. Today, the MV Joyita remains a warning, not just about the danger of the sea, but about how quickly certainty can disappear. A ship can leave port with a destination, a crew, a schedule, a cargo, a plan, and somewhere beyond the horizon, all of that can dissolve. The Joyita was supposed to be difficult to sink, and in the end, it did not sink. That is the haunting part. The ship survived. The people did not. 25 people boarded the Joyita. The ocean returned only the vessel, and for more than half a century the South Pacific has kept the rest of the story to itself. A damaged ship, an empty deck, a missing logbook, a silent radio, 3 life rafts gone, 25 people vanished, and one question that still has no certain answer: why did they leave the ship?